everyone, and welcome to a Modern Sales Pros event. I'm super excited to get started with our amazing guest today, Pete Kazanjy. But
Oh,
before we begin, I will give folks a couple minutes to trickle in, and I'd love to ask Pete a question as we wait for folks. Pete, do you have any fun travel plans coming up soon?
I wouldn't say super soon. However, my wife, who is in charge of our travel curriculum, and we consider our travel now curriculum for our son Mikey. I think she's like lining up a trip to Japan, a trip to Tokyo, and probably Kyoto in the coming bit. And by the coming bit, I'm not sure. It's probably like in the forward 6 months in some sort of capacity. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to land, but like that's the move there. What about you? Do you have any travel plans lined up?
I think I'm gonna go do Europe at some point. I have a couple friends that just moved there this past year that I would love to visit,
Wow.
and I've never been to London. So if anyone is calling in from
Mm,
London, give me some recommendations.
mm.
But I feel like Japan is doing this massive marketing push because in the last few months, I have 5 different people that went to Japan. So I hear it's like an amazing place with amazing food, and the culture there is incredible. So I know that you and your family are going to have a great time.
Nice. I'm
Awesome.
pumped.
So let's get started. And I'd also love to know where everyone is calling in from. So drop where you're calling in from in the chat.
San
But today,
Francisco.
Toronto. But today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. So, for those of you who are not familiar, MSP is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own. We do this through our online forum. We also have quarterly summits, and we also have our in person events. So stay tuned. We might be coming to a city near you, and also our amazing virtual events like you're here right now. So stay tuned. We'll be if you're not a part of MSP, first of all, what are you doing? This is an amazing group to be a part
What
of.
are you even doing?
So you'll be invited to join right after this event, so stay tuned for more details. And quick housekeeping notes, if you have a question for Pete, please use the Q&A function at the top right-hand corner or leverage the chat. And this session is being recorded, so if you have a colleague or friend who couldn't make it, rest assured the key takeaways and any links mentioned in this call, along with Pete's slide deck, will be made available on the MSP website before the end of the day. And last but not least, this event wouldn't be made possible without our sponsor for today's event, Atrium. I'm actually going to pass it off to Pete to say a few words about Atrium and then take the reins on the presentation and content, and then I'll be back for closing remarks. So, Pete, take it away.
Thank you, and you're the best. Appreciate it. All right, let me share my screen here. Hello, everybody. There we go. Hi. All right. I'm excited to talk about uh, cr- winning sales cultures, right? Winning sales cultures that are driven through higher performance management that drives the outputs that you're looking for. Um, so I work at Atrium. We make what we call sales performance management software, and specifically, what our customers use Atrium to do is to measure, manage, and improve sales performance. Um, and primarily, the mechanism by which we do that is by helping managers more effectively manage, right? By through better encouragement, better coaching, and better accountability. A lot of that is driven by data in some sort of capacity, metrics, and of course now AI helping to interpret that and provide recommendations. But really, what it comes down to is it comes down to excellent management to drive better performance of your reps. So I'm excited to talk about like the broader kind of landscape of management and how it can drive a winning culture. But before we get into that, our friends here at Atrium have an offer here for folks where we're working with Richard Harris, who's a absolutely fantastic sales trainer, sales management trainer, enablement leader, etc., to put on a sales manager enablement boot camp to help uh, upskill sales managers, and we're paying for it. And you can send your managers to it if you want. And all that we ask in return for you sending your managers, you know, any number you want. You know, it could be all 10 of your managers, could be you know, you smaller organization, could be 2 of your managers, what have you. But the point is that you can send them to upskill because you know, manager enablement is really important. But it's my understanding that CFOs aren't really super excited about writing a $25,000, $50,000 check to do a manager boot camp for folks these days. So we're like, hey, we could do it, but all we would ask for in exchange is we a meeting to discuss with your, you know, your CRO, your VP of sales, how how you currently drive high performance, manage and improve sales performance in your organization, um, and share how our customers do it with us. So that's a little bit of an offer here for folks. We'll kind of get jamming here. So if folks haven't met me before, my name is Pete Kazanjy. That headshot's a little old. I wish I had that much hair. But I'm one of the founders of Atrium, as I just kind of discussed. And so um, my background is I started a recruiting software company called TalentBin in 2009 or so. It was bought by Monster Worldwide in 2014, and that's really where I went from being like a business generalist founder, so like product manager, product marketer by background, to our first seller at TalentBin, then our first sales manager and our first sales leader, and so on and so forth. And so then what came out of that was we were eventually acquired by Monster Worldwide. Went from managing a 20-person sales organization to being responsible for new product sales for like a 600-person sales organization. So just a little bit of a difference there. But in the process, really got super intimate with the notions of operationally excellent, um, analytically forward sales organizations and sales management, and so on and so forth. So wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales. There actually happens to be one on my desk right here, conveniently from another webinar I was doing, and then started Modern Sales Pros, and then after that started Atrium. So that's a little bit on me. As you can tell, I think about sales and sales excellence just a little bit. um, cool. So let's go ahead and talk about what it takes to create a winning a sales culture of winning. um, and no surprise, it really kind of comes down to managers. I'm going to make a case to you all as to why your frontline managers are the critical link in driving higher performance in your sales organization, and then why they're kind of struggling to perform, or what the kind of common pitfalls that block sales managers, frontline managers, from being able to manage and improve performance effectively. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you can potentially solve that. um, so first and foremost, you know, this isn't any secret. Our friends at Gartner talk about this. High performing managers are like really the difference between success and failure. You get all sorts of wonderful things that come out of it. This was a Gartner study that kind of talks about the fact that you get higher productivity. You're more likely for your reps to be top performers. You're going to retain them better because they're going to be performing. They're going to be earning more. They're not going to be grumpy with their managers. And then also you just get like more juice out of them as well, right? um, that kind of in a more detailed fashion, Michelle Vazana, one of my favorite sales management thinkers and author of Cracking the Sales Management Code with Jason Jordan. And then she wrote her own book, this one right here, Crushing Quota, that's all about sales coaching and essentially management. And as a small aside, like people talk about coaching a lot, but I actually think that like coaching is actually just kind of like one subset of management. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but this her book is really about why management is so important. And you kind of see some details here. So the top 25% of managers end up driving um, nearly 50% more revenue than the bottom 25%. So a lot more attainment. And the primary reason why is it's not because they take their like awesome performers and they make them like awesomer, because the awesome performers already are awesome, right? It's more that what they do is they get more of their reps, the next level down, they get more of those guys and gals to quota, right? Essentially, they upskill them, they lift them up, they drive higher performance from those folks that are one layer down, right? Because your killers are going to be killers regardless, right? And so this is kind of like the job to be done by managers, right? Is to see, is to take that next level down, kind of like in the bell curve, if you will, the average to the above averages, and push them to the right, if you will. And so you can kind of see this where organizations who prioritized management ended up driving, nearly 10% more revenue across their teams. Actually, I was talking to a sales enablement leader from a very, very large SaaS software company with like 1,000 sellers. You guys would totally recognize the logo. It's a very impressive sales organization. And he was talking about they did this program where they taught managers to manage, and also leaders, right? So we got managers here, got ICs down here, got managers here, we got leaders here. And so because they have such a large sales organization, they could do this AP test. And so what they did was they implemented a program not just where enablement enabled the managers, but the enablement implemented a program to help leaders, so second level leaders, so managers of managers, better upskill their managers themselves on a recurring basis. Because like an enablement program can kind of happen and then it's done, and like people go back about their business. And so the leaders who were engaged in coaching programs, so essentially coaching enablement and manager enablement programs to make their managers better and make them more hands-on and make them, make sure that they're doing their management work more effectively. That kind of part of the organization ended up out attaining the other side of the organization by like, I think it was like 25% or something. So it turns out that organizations that invest in making their frontline managers better, so either making their frontline managers better and then making their second line managers prioritize making these guys better, right, as like a source of leverage, they drive more revenue. And then you can kind of see this where organizations that allocate their resources, in this case, Michelle talks about training resources, to managers, ended up driving more revenue, right? Because most of the time, training budgets go towards rep training, which is fine, but it's not the only thing, right? And again, it's kind of ephemeral, right? Where like, you have a sales trainer show up, they do the rep, they train up the reps, you do a day, you do a couple days or whatever, and then like it starts kind of attriting after that. Versus the managers are always there. So if you upskill the managers, right, such that they, right, can continue to be effective managers, well then that is like the gift that keeps on giving. I'm thinking of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation as I say that, but that's the gift that keeps on giving, where those managers will continue to be more and more effective. So that's kind of the claim as to why management matters there. I hope you believe me. Okay, so then what should the managers be doing? Well, this is the thing I was kind of mentioning earlier, is that a lot of times people talk about coaching, right? Coaching, coaching, coaching. And I think the challenge is that coaching ends up being kind of like one sub component of what effective managers ought to be doing. And when people think about coaching, they think about seeing like, oh, you have like a hitch in your golf swing, right? Or in your like baseball, your batting swing, or like your soccer shot, or like whatever. Like, I need to diagnose what the hitch is in your swing, and then and then coach you on how to fix that. And so that is actually really important, but it ends up being a kind of a more sophisticated managerial behavior. There's two other things that managers need to be doing as well to be effective managers. And like one is just to be a cheerleader. Like I think we forget this because sales is hard. Sales is hard and our reps are constantly getting their butts kicked by buyers and like have like being lied to and having their like their hearts broken and so on and so forth, and deals falling apart at the finish line and so on and so forth. And so I think it's important for us to remember that one of the things that we need to do as a manager is to encourage our reps, to encourage and motivate them and stoke them out. Um, and a lot of the times managers don't take the opportunity to do that, and like this is a key managerial behavior that is super important to drive. Like if you think about what's going to drive higher rep effort, right, they're going to show up and crank for a manager that's got their back and is stoking them out, right, and is encouraging them. So I think that's actually something that a lot of times people forget, right? They forget that that's something that they should be doing. We talked about coaching a little bit there. It's definitely something that managers should be doing. The last thing is also something that I think folks have maybe forgotten about. I sound like a grumpy old boomer, but I'm not. I'm on the border of X and millennial. Okay, guys, but but managers have to hold their reps accountable. If we say that rep that like AE self prospecting and rep pipe gen is an important initiative for our organization, and that is the case, like we are going to do pipe gen Tuesdays, shout out MongoDB PTC squad. um, and like if we say that we're going to do that thing, then we have to hold our reps accountable to doing that, because even if it's not fun, because if we don't, all sorts of awful things happen. One is, if we say we're going to do a thing and then we don't hold people accountable to actually doing it, again, provided that they've been enabled, so on and so forth. But if we don't hold them accountable to doing that, well, what other things do we say we're going to do and we don't do? Like show up to customer calls, show up to the office, reply to our emails, things like that. Like, oh, these things are optional. Wonderful. What else is optional? So that's the first thing. It's really important for managers to drive accountability, because like it kind of comes down to the crux of we do the things that we say that we're going to do, and the back check to ensure that is accountability, right? So it's auditing to ensure that people are actually doing the thing that they're supposed to be doing, and then we intervene when they're not. The other thing that's really insidious about avoiding accountability, and a lot of managers, a lot of junior managers, and like in the last 5 to 10 years, I was talking with the CRO about this the other day. People were so afraid that their reps were going to leave and like go somewhere to some company that had raised a ton of money, that didn't have product market fit and was eventually going to get annihilated. But so instead of saying like, hey, you're supposed to be doing your calling, you're not doing your calling, these reps over here are doing their calling, right? So as a result, managers have lost that accountability. A lot of managers have lost that accountability muscle. Or if they were promoted from being an individual contributor to a seller, to a manager in the last 5 to 10 years, they maybe they never grew that muscle. They got this muscle maybe, right? And they might have a lot of that muscle, but they don't necessarily have this muscle, and they probably don't have this muscle either, because this muscle right here, coaching, effective coaching means admitting that there's an issue to begin with, right? Which comes to the notion of like, hey, there is behavior that is not where it needs to be, and we are going to improve that, right? um so the last thing I'll touch on, not to kind of be like a grumpy Gus here or whatever, is that with accountability, a critical thing with accountability is your high performers want to see accountability in your organization. When you have people, I forget, it might have been Stanley McChrystal. I can't remember exactly. It's like some four-star general talks about the fact that you have like this bell curve, right? You have your high performers who are going to highly perform regardless of what they do. You have these laggards down here who like probably shouldn't be in your organization, and they kind of they pull people down. Then you have these folks in the middle, And then the folks in the middle kind of get pulled this way or they get pulled this way, right? They kind of like go with the flow. And so without accountability, right? Without creating a culture of winning and demonstrating to folks like this is what we do when we say that we're going to do our AE prospecting, when we say that we're going to do our calling, when we say that we're going to drive more of our stage one opportunities into pilot or into stage three or whatever. When we say we're going to do those things, we're going to do those things because those high performers up here on the bell curve, they're going to do them. But if they see other people not doing it and they see that they are not being recognized for doing it, but that these other folks down here who are not doing it are not being held accountable for that, you're going to have a problem up here. And this is the worst place to have a problem of grumpy high performers and like mid-high performers who are like, oh, well, geez, why am I kicking butt here and taking care of business if it doesn't matter? Like if I'm not getting recognized for it. And then the response to that could be like, oh, well, like you're driving a bunch of quota, et cetera, et cetera. Don't get it twisted. Like humans are funny like that. Like they like quota is great and money motivation is awesome and your sales reps should have that, need to have that, but they also want recognition and they also hate seeing other people not toe the line and dragging the organization down. And so these are the things that our managers should be doing. These are the ways that, and so these are the places where they should be doing that. um, these are all the ways, like the katas, right, and the operating rhythm behaviors, wherein encouragement, coaching, and accountability comes to bear, right? So they managers do these tasks, right? They do these business moves, these football moves in these venues. So when they are inspecting deals, doing pipeline review, they are doing encouragement, they are doing coaching, they are doing accountability. Hey, I think this is the third time in a row we've looked at this deal and there hasn't been a meeting on the calendar. That's not okay. That's accountability. That means that conversation is that, wow, this op used to be in this stage. And I think last time we spoke, it had this many people who were engaged in it. And now you've doubled the number of stakeholders who are multi-threaded. That's awesome. That's awesome. Encouragement, right? And so that's what happens across this. So deal inspection, a data-based one-on-one, and encouragement. Wow, you smoked your calling goal last week, right? You smoked your AE prospecting goal. That's fantastic. So goal tracking, encouragement. Hey, we're light on our calling, right? This is the third week in a row that we've been light on our calling. What's going on there? Accountability, right? So these are the different places where all this needs to happen, right? So then the next question would be, all right, well, like that's cool, Pete, but like why doesn't this happen, right? Why doesn't this happen? And really kind of comes down to like two things that block managers from managing reps consistently and proactively. Number one, in order to understand where there are areas for encouragement, areas for coaching, and areas for accountability, well, managers ought to and have to interpret metrics. The problem, of course, is that oops, walls of charts like this um, are awful for managers to interpret, and they really struggle to do so. And so, as a result, they they don't do it. And then the second thing that we talked about a little bit previously, and this is around um, managerial upskilling, making sure managers have the muscles in order to do this, and then also just saying, hey, this is something that we do in our organization, is a hesitation to coach or performance manage it, a hesitation to have those conversations. It's not even a conversation, it's just like a sentence that I was noting earlier, like, hey, I think this is the third time this opportunity hasn't had a meeting in the future. um, like it's time to close this out, or maybe we should reassign this deal to somebody else. um, that's not a conversation, that's a sentence. And a lot of managers are hesitant to do that because it makes them pucker. And so as a result, this is, and actually, I mean, even in encouragement, this is a very insidious example of this, but I've seen managers who are reticent to publicly celebrate. This kind of sounds ridiculous to say what I'm saying is, but I've seen managers who are publicly hesitant to celebrate high performance for fear of discouraging or frustrating or what have you people who are not the folks that are being celebrated. And like my reaction to that is like that's just like awful. like like that's just, you got to just sweep that mindset right out of your organization, because we are here to win and sales is hard. And so when people are outperforming and they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing in spite of it being hard, in spite of there being economic headwinds, then we need to celebrate them, because one, they need to hear it, because if they don't hear it the next time, they may not put in that effort. And then secondarily, the rest of the organization needs to see that and say, wow, if I do that, I will also be celebrated and focused on. And then the laggards need to see that and say, gosh, like it is possible. That person right there can do it. There is no excuse for where I'm at. And so this is why hesitation to have performance conversations, or like it's not even again, conversation is probably the wrong word, to like to do performance actions, to do performance management actions, hesitation to do these performance management actions um, is another kind of big thing. Like they don't know the thing that they ought to encourage or coach or hold accountable on, because oh my god, it's a wall of charts. And then even if they're handed a set of things that say, hey, this rep is crushing it with respect to their calling volume, this rep is crushing it with respect to their new op creation, this rep is crushing it from their, you know, their conversion, et cetera, et cetera. Oftentimes, and then the flip side, this rep is lagging there, here they're lagging here, this rep is lagging there, this rep is lagging over here. When managers hesitate, even if they're given that list of things to do, oftentimes they clench, right? And so what they do instead is they fall back to this, which is you know, it's better than nothing, but it's not great, right? Which is just deals, 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 just inspecting deals, inspecting deals, and inspecting deals. And so cool. All right. Well, like that's not fun, right? Like, okay, Pete, I understand what they ought to be doing, and I understand why they don't necessarily do it. How can we make it such that they do it? There's a lot of things. I would recommend. I highly recommend Michelle Vazana's book, Crushing Quota. I also highly recommend Corey Bray's Five Secrets of the Sales Coach. We give out lots of copies of those books because there's like a whole inventory of managerial things that they should be doing, jobs to be done, um, that you know are like these things right here, that and where these actions happen. But we're going to talk about a couple of folks here, a couple of examples of how to do this. And so we're going to talk about, like, we have this saying at Atrium, call it, we say calendar is destiny, right? So we need to make sure that our managers have the places on their calendar to do those managerial actions. We're going to talk about setting clear expectations about performance levels with our reps. We're going to talk about inspection, right? Which is like, you know, detecting what's going on and kind of saying like, okay, like where's the area, where's the area to encourage, where's the area to coach, where's the area to hold accountable. And then we're going to talk about how to actually prosecute those conversations. So that'll be like the second half of this presentation here. So cool. So before we get into that, I'll do a little commercial here for Atrium. We are in the business of helping managers be more effective and do those things, that encouraging, that coaching, and that accountability with data. But instead of the legacy way of doing it, of saying, here's your dashboard, figure it out, right? Instead, the way that Atrium does this is with AI, right? And helping. And so the way that works is Atrium has a um, a full library of performance metrics that works straight out of the box. Takes about 5 minutes to set up all the metrics you could want to measure the performance of SDRs, AEs, AMs, CSMs, get them set up, connected to your CRM, pre-calculated, et cetera, et cetera. But then importantly, the way that, and this is kind of new in the last like 6 months or so, Atrium has layered AI, large language model AI, across all of that in order to synthesize, to detect what's going on with those reps. So you can kind of see this happening in kind of real time here, to synthesize the areas for improve, like what's going well, where are areas for improvement, to make recommendations, to prescribe a recommendation, and then also to generate the actions, to generate the managerial actions, as you can kind of see right here, right? So literally write the high five email, literally write the coaching email, literally write the enablement plan that is specific to the performance of that team, of that rep, right? So it's not general. It's Frank, I saw that you are crushing it with respect to your meeting volume. That is awesome. Here is a high five. Susie, I have noticed that our pipeline hygiene needs attention, as noted by our stuck opportunities and untouched ops situation. Here are the things that we are going to do, that you are going to do in order to drive that down. And we're going to come back to this in order to prove that we have improved that pipeline hygiene situation. So all of that is, rather than having to fruitlessly dashboard dive, that is all done via AI, right? Um, this is something that's great for frontline managers. So it'll look across an entire team, tell you what's going well, where the areas for coaching are across the team, and which reps represent that. Um, it will also tell you what is going on a rep by rep basis. Right, so this right here, this is an individual rep right here. Hey, what's going out? Positivity, or what's going well? Positivity and encouragement. Uh-oh, where could we be better? Gee whiz, we're not where we need to be with our accounts touched, right? Or our activity, right? So assisting the frontline manager to be more effective by doing that synthesis, that recommendation, and then authoring a draft of those actions, right? Um, and it's really that last thing that oftentimes managers, because a lot of organizations will say, hey, like we've done this very large investment in, we see this a lot with like a lot of our larger customers, like we spent all this time and energy over the last like couple of years putting together a bunch of like Power BI or like Tableau or what have you, and gee whiz, like the managers really can't, they really can't synthesize it. And then, but we have these sales operations helpers who can do that synthesis for those managers and kind of oftentimes give them the answer, like, hey, this rep right here has an activity problem, this rep right here has a pipeline hygiene problem, and then the managers still struggle, right, to act. It goes back to this thing right here. It's like, even when given the list of things to correct, and so that's where, like, a helper, an AI assistant, right, sales management assistant, they can literally write that coaching email, um, right? Like, hi, Susie, um, doing great around XYZ. Noticed that we're not where we need to be with respect to our pipeline hygiene. Here's how I'd like you to fix that. Let's talk about it in our one-on-one. So that step right there can be challenging for managers. And so having AI just author that for them, can be extremely impactful. And so what ends up happening is you get this virtuous cycle of performance management where you understand what's going on because it's synthesizing and interpreting the metrics in question. We get a prescription. So like, as an example we saw earlier, oh gee whiz, this rep's untouched ops situation and stuck ops situation is not great. Cool. Go ahead and calendar 2 hours with the rep to clean their pipe together. You're going to sit with them together, and then maybe calendar for them 2 times a week, for an hour, maybe on Tuesdays and maybe on Thursdays, for them to make sure that they don't have this problem anymore. Manager then projects that managerial action. It's like written for them, right? And then by doing that, like, so that management has been done. Performance management, which previously would not have been done, it has now been done, and rep behavior changes, and then performance improves. And then we go to the next thing, because there's always going to be a next thing, right? So this is something that's powerful for all levels of the organization, whether it's managers, leaders, and operations, but also reps as well. Because again, reps, managers have 8 ducklings that they're responsible for, 6 ducklings that they're responsible for, what have you. But reps are with themselves 8 hours a day. And so having something that can help coach them directly, so like help them kind of assistant manage them directly, the same way that like my Whoop assistant manage, like, personal trains me and reminds me that like I need to do a better job on my sleep, or I need to do a better job on raising my activity, or what have you. Having that directly go to the rep ends up being extremely powerful. You can kind of see that right here, where these are some examples of Atrium sales coach speaking directly to a rep saying, hey, you know what, you're crushing it with respect to your bookings at this stage of the quarter. That's awesome. High five. But like, that's great. But additionally, noticing that we could get our prospecting a little bit higher here. It seems like we're not really hitting our goal. That's accountability right there. You can do both. And that's, as a manager, you need to do both. And we would prefer that our managers would consistently and habitually do this daily with their reps. They do encouragement, do accountability, and do coaching. But it just doesn't end up happening. And so what we have found is that through data-driven sales performance management with AI, you can help the manager do this by reducing the friction and the bar for execution there, and then you can deliver this information directly to the reps, who are excited to make sure that they are on the path to success there. Um, we've this approach with sales coach has been something that's been very powerful. Gartner has been named as a cool vendor for generative AI in sales. Um, I think this was a couple months ago or so. They named like 5 vendors in generative AI in sales, and and Atrium's sales coach was the only managerial one. And so we work with hundreds of awesome customers, folks that you probably recognize like Gainsight, Envoy, WorkRamp, et cetera, in order to make their managers better, which then drives extremely important metrical improvement. Cool. So that's a little bit of an advertisement there, but let's go ahead and get back to how we can drive effective performance management in our teams. And so we're going to talk about, in the last like 20 minutes that we have here, we're going to talk about these 4 things. Number 1, calendar is destiny. Let's make sure that we're blocking time on the calendar to do that. Awesome. This is an inventory of meetings that you can have in order to facilitate that, right? So if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. So make sure that it's on the calendar, but importantly, make sure that the things that you want to have done have their own space on the calendar. So like pipeline review, that's not a complicated one. Managers, they'll talk about deals like they're falling out of bed, right? So doing that, an effective one-on-one that is not this, right? That is not focused on pipeline, is not focused on deals and helping reps get unstuck. QBRs, right? So quarterly, coming together and saying, hey, here's the highlights and the lowlights of last quarter, and we're going to set new intentions on that. So the way to kind of think about it is like pipeline is like paying attention to the deals, right? One-on-one is maybe every 2 weeks, and it's focused on the rep, what's going on with the reps, and oftentimes the accountability and coaching and encouragement that happens here. It should be happening here for sure. Like the symptoms, or like the kind of chronic issue, like, oh man, we're going to focus on our pipeline hygiene, that is oftentimes discovered as a result of pipeline inspection, right? But also through metrical inspection. And then the QBR is an opportunity for us to take a lay of the land and see what we want to change for the coming quarter based on all the outcomes of this. So it's kind of like they stack. It's like a fractal, right? They stack up into this larger thing. One thing that we have seen with our customers is that sales coach can be extremely powerful for those one-on-ones. It's like, hey, what are the opportunities? What are the issues for this rep? I'm going to hop into this one-on-one with this rep. What are the issues that maybe we need to address? Do we have an activity issue? Right? Looks like this rep has an activity issue. Is there something else? Right? And of course, we want to start with positivity. Hey, you're crushing it on sales cycle. That's awesome. Let's talk about prospecting. Let's talk about prospecting. Cool. Number two, set clear expectations about levels of performance. So you'd be shocked that a lot of organizations are resistant to setting clear expectations around what good looks like, um, and and so oftentimes can be hard to hold people accountable, right? Um, and also encourage people, hey, you are above the goal. That is awesome. It's hard. It can be hard to do these things right here, which then leads to this behavior right here, if we haven't said what good looks like. And so typically what that means is just goals, right? And not lagging indicator goals. Quota's easy. Quota is very easy, but it's a huge lagging indicator, right? Quota is the result. So wins and bookings come from a high quantity of high quality selling behavior. And that high quantity of high quality selling behavior can be measured and needs to be measured from a precursor standpoint. So for account executives, that that looks like things like customer facing meeting volume, email volume, accounts touched, et cetera, et cetera. Is sending more like is sending more emails going to close more business? Not necessarily. Like you could send a bunch of stupid emails into the ether, but it turns out that using things like email and phone and customer facing meetings in order to drive more interaction with your clients to drive to will then advance more opportunities, which will then drive more wins, which will then drive more bookings, right? So one of my favorite business books is by Bill Walsh, The Score Takes Care of Itself. It's very difficult for us to impact the score in a football game, but we can really focus on trying to get more first downs. And the way that we get more first downs and advance the ball down the field is by gaining more yards on each play. Right? So if we focus in on gaining more yards and hitting more first downs, the score will take care of itself. These are the first downs here. These are the yards. This is how we measure that. And so what we should say is like, hey, we know that you're gonna be in effect if you have 10 customer facing meetings a week as an account executive, at least we know that you will be in a good spot, right? It won't guarantee that things will necessarily like that you'll hit quota, but how about this? In all my years, I've never seen a rep crush it with 3 customer facing meetings a week, as an example, right? And this is kind of dependent on sales motion, right? So if an enterprise seller, it might be a little bit like they're spending more time on RFPs and security questionnaires and kind of internal demo creation with their SE, et cetera, et cetera. So that might be lower, right? Because there's more kind of non-customer facing meeting works, but it's not nothing, right? And so it's important to make sure that you're measuring these things. Same is true with SDRs. A little bit easier with respect to SDRs, and people are more people are less resistant to this. But this is critical, right? And this is something like I have another webinar that I do on Moneyball in sales and also in professional athletics. Like these are the things that like Steph Curry and Aaron Rodgers. I guess Aaron Rodgers is injured, but like these are the things that are used to measure the highest high performing athletes at the highest level of their game. So if you have a rep or a manager's like, you can't manage this, or sorry, you can't measure this, man, they are wrong. They're probably not a fit for your organization, because if Steph Curry is subject to instrumentation on leading indicators, quantity and quality of leading indicators, then guess what? Like your mid-market AE or your enterprise AE, they are too, right? Kobe Bryant never whined about being measured. And that's part of the culture. That's part of the importance of driving a culture of winning is like, yeah, we measure ourselves to make sure that we're doing the right thing, right? It's not opinions. It's just true. The same way that when I'm taking my 6-year-old to his soccer coach or to his basketball coach, it is true when he misses a shot on a goal. There's no like, oh, well, it was close. It's like, no, he missed the shot. That is true. We're not going to hide our head in the sand and pretend that like, well, maybe actually we'll be okay and we'll win even if like we're missing shots on goal here, right? Or you're losing control of the ball. No, it is very obvious that the ball got stolen from you. It is very obvious that your shot missed the goal. We need to measure things to make sure that it is obvious that the right things are being done, or if they're not being done, to then hold accountable, right? If the right things are being done, we're going to go ahead and encourage that and celebrate it. And if they're not being done, we're going to hold accountable and coach on that, right? Um, cool. So let's talk about it. So we've set our goals. Yay. Awesome. Awesome. We're on our way to making sure that we have a culture of accountability and encouragement and coaching, which will create a winning environment. Sweet. Now what? We have to inspect. We have to inspect, right? Because we have to inspect what we expect. And so these are the mechanisms by which we're going to do that. We could use CRM reporting. Sounds awful. We could use business intelligence like Power BI or Tableau or whatever. Sounds even more expansively, sounds great for analysts, sounds great for sales operations people, sounds really problematic for sales managers and reps. Or we could use something like sales performance management software that is focused directly on that. Obviously, I'm biased, and that's my favorite category. But that's the thing that is the more modern way of doing that. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to use that data in order to interpret what's going on, right? And so the kind of the old school way of doing this is what we call dashboard diving, right? Stare and compare. Look, this bar is higher. Yay. Let's encourage that person. Oh, gee whiz, this bar right here is way lower. That seems like an opportunity for an accountability conversation, right? Or like, this person, so, bars, trends in line charts. This line is going down right here, this orange one. Gosh, that seems like an opportunity to coach and figure out what's going on. Gee whiz, these guys are consistently low, right? That seems like an opportunity for accountability right there. So we inspect, and what the inspection does is it kicks off managerial, or it ought to kick off managerial actions. That's what it ought to be doing. Kind of a way that I don't think I have one on my desk here. Gee whiz, Pete. So inspecting those key metrics to diagnose what's going on, that can be a managerial or a sales operational kind of like Sherlock Holmes exercise, which is important. Like what we're trying to figure out is like, what's the root cause? Hey, this rep is light with respect to their customer facing meeting volume. Is that because they don't have enough ops on their calendar, or sorry, ops in their pipe? Why is that? Right? It's because their new op inflow deteriorated, so they just like don't have enough ducks on the pond to shoot at. Is it because they're like losing things earlier in the funnel? Like, what's the deal here? And so that's by looking at other related metrics, we can figure out what the root cause is. Again, this is why using AI to do that synthesis on those metrics and say, hey, this rep right here, he's got a win rate problem. It looks like it's probably coming from the fact that his pipeline hygiene is really problematic. Let's go ahead and let's get after that. Right? So using AI to do that interpretation rather than asking our managers, who are not analysts, they're wonderful communicators, and they have a high bias to action, and they're charismatic and they're phenomenal communicators and motivators, and you want to, and like they help do change management in customers. um, a- Asking them to be analysts and to dashboard dive is typically a recipe for frustration. And so I'm sure the sales operations people in the audience are like, oh yeah, yep, can you make me a new dashboard of 10 tiles, which I'm not going to look at, right? Everyone can, I think, everyone can empathize with that situation, right? And the answer why, and the answer as to why that's the case is because that, that's not the skill profile of a sales manager, of a sales leader, or what have you, um, per se. Like they are there to manage, right? They are there to encourage, they are there to coach, they are there to hold accountable. They are not there to be a data analyst, right? So if we can give them a data analyst, they can do that for them and then help them understand where the issues are and then create a recommendation there. Great things will happen. Lastly, we're going to talk about doing those managerial actions. So having the conversation and making a plan. So these are kind of some steps here that managers should be engaged in. They should be giving feedback frequently and immediately. Um, Again, feedback can be encouragement, it can be accountability, it can be coaching. And in fact, and I don't have a slide on this, and I have a poster that's in the mail. Usually what you want is like encouragement, encouragement, coaching, encouragement, accountability, encouragement, 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 encouragement. Right? I feel like feels like being John Malkovich here. Encouragement, 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 encouragement. And so you want to do a lot of encouragement because it's going to help motivate your reps. And the encouragement can't just be random. Hey, Slugger, doing a great job. Jeff, I saw that you crushed your AE self-source opportunity goal last week, right? Or sorry, last month. That's awesome, right? Specific encouragement. Yeah, that's right. In our organization, so Jeff is like, in our organization, we celebrate this. I just got a shout out from the CRO. He or she told me directly, oh man, they also took a screenshot of the metric in question and dropped it into the sales channel and gave me a shout out. Wow, stoked. That's a version of feedback. So encouragement, right? One, because it's going to set the table for everybody else. Two, because when it comes time to hold Jeff accountable and coach Jeff, we have a big deposit in the bank. Right? We've made lots of encouragement deposits, which then now we can withdraw from. So frequently and immediately want to give lots of feedback. Want to open with positivity, which is important. Reiterate why we do this, to make people better, to make them more money, to make them advance in their career, etc. Share what the issue is, right? Share what the issue is and be specific about it. Notice that we're light on our calling behavior. I've noticed that we are light with respect to our stage 4 pipeline advancement goal this quarter, and I'm worried about it, right? What do we think might be causing this issue? Let's talk about it, right? But we're not going to pretend the issue is not an issue. Let's talk about why we might be causing what might be causing this issue, and then let's go ahead and propose a solution for that. Okay. So one, the place where that happens, in the one-on-one. Make sure that we're doing our one-on-ones. It's great. Okay. That's the place for it. If we are doing consistent sales performance management in our one-on-ones, it's less likely that we're going to have to get to a performance improvement plan, right? We've seen this a lot in our organization and other organizations. If you have enough of, if you are frequently in your one-on-ones talking about the fact that somebody is light on those precursor goals, either A, they remediate, or B, they self offboard, right? Gosh, I guess sales isn't for me, right? Um, and then lastly, if you need to kind of figure out who needs to go versus who needs to stay, the will and skill framework is really powerful for this, right? So, um, are they not doing the work? So that's will, right? Do they not have the skill, right? Like, are their conversion metrics off, et cetera. Reps that don't have poor will metrics, like activity metrics, level of effort metrics, they just don't give a hoot, right? Um, those are probably the folks that you're going to want to offboard first. Um, and then and also have skill issues. Reps that have will issues, even if their skills are fine, um, probably the next step because you can upskill. Reps that do give a hoot, and then lastly, with respect to reps that have skill deficits but are doing well with respect to will, um, the those are our reps that we want to coach and improve. Right. So these are the kind of the steps here. Again, the way to kind of like where we think that this is really important is reducing the friction for managers to do those behaviors to celebrate based on this metric right here. Hey guys, we're crushing it with respect to um, our hit our quarterly goal quota goal ahead of times. That's awesome. Let's celebrate. Good job everybody. Like good job team. Or do that individual on a rep basis. So like let's make sure those managerial actions are happening, but they're specific. Similarly, hey, here's an opportunity for us to coach up based on a topic in question, right? Um, so doing a great job with respect to pipeline generation. Looks like we have a little bit of a conversion issue here, right? Got our positivity here. Let's go ahead and provide the coach, like talk about the problem and provide a recommendation to talk about it one-on-one, right? And then moreover, if we want to figure out what are we going to do about this, let's generate an enablement plan on that. And so these are all AI generated um, coaching actions or managerial actions that come from the specific performance metric state of that rep, of that of that team, et cetera, et cetera. And then importantly, it's not just in the software, it also comes directly to people, right? Like you can't avoid it. The management's coming to you, right? The same way that a manager would. The manager is your in your inbox next to your desk, showing up in Slack with encouragement, with coaching, and with accountability, right? And so doing all these things, this is how we drive a high performance culture in an organization. Um, so I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. I think that's everything we have to cover here today. I would recommend if you are interested, if manager enablement is something that is top of mind for your organization. It is for a lot of organizations these days. They need their reps to perform more meaningfully, and the route to better rep performance is through better managerial, like through better frontline management, which comes from better manager enablement. We are hosting this boot camp by Richard Harris. It's the sort of thing that would normally cost you like 20K to bring a dedicated sales management enablement person into your organization for like a one-day event or what have you. We are hosting it, and if you would like to attend, or sorry, if you would like to send your managers to attend, all we ask in exchange for that is a discovery meeting with your CRO, your VP of sales, et cetera, who should care about managers being effective managers and sales performance management. So thank you very much. Oh, hi, Ange. How's it going?
Good. I also dropped the link if you would like to sign up. So please sign up. It's an amazing offer that Atrium is providing in the next few months. So definitely check it out. All the links that Pete had mentioned throughout this talk track will be made available on the MSP website before the end of the day, along with his amazing slide deck. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you at the next event. Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
thanks.
Bye.